For my thoughts on all the latest happenings in the NFL in a completely relaxed, unscripted format, be sure to check out my channel, JG9 News. And now, on with our feature presentation. October 7th, 2001. It's week 4 of the NFL season, and as we're at the quarter mark of this new campaign, we've got an AFC Central rivalry on our hands over at Heinz Field between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers. This game is a historic occasion, as this is the first ever regular season game to take place at Heinz Field, as this was the Steelers' home debut following spending the past 3 decades at Three Rivers Stadium. It wasn't supposed to be like that, as they were originally supposed to open up their stadium in week 2 against the Cleveland Browns, but that game got postponed following the attacks on September 11th, so this game against the Bengals was now their home debut. Anyways, besides the historical aspect of this game, this was a big one for the main team in our story, the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincy's off to a pretty solid start to the year, going 2-1 through their first 3 games, including a win against the defending Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens. However, the AFC is super jam-packed right now, with 10 teams having just 1 loss or less through the first 3 weeks. Not a lot is separating the haves from the have-nots, so if you win this game and keep this hot start to the season alive and create some sort of separation, you put yourselves in a really good spot to say the least. Unfortunately for the Bengals, this game is not going according to plan, as following a 48-yard field goal by Chris Brown with 1:52 left, the Steelers have a 9-point lead, leading it 16-7. Cincy's offense has faltered for most of the game, as they failed to score on 9 of their first 10 drives, and on their first 9 drives of the game, they managed to get just 117 yards of total offense. But there was still time to do something. It would take a bit, but a 9-point deficit isn't the end of the world, even if it isn't ideal. Just need to get something going on this drive, obviously, because it's 4 down, do or die territory. First down, and John Kitna's pass falls incomplete. Well, that stinks. Second down, and John Kitna's pass, once again, falls incomplete. Well, that really stinks. Third down, and John Kitna's pass, once again, falls incomplete. Well, that really stinks. I'm noticing a theme on this drive. That brings up 4th down. This is the ball game, especially because you have no timeouts and you're down by 2 scores. Get this first down, get the 10 yards, and you keep the ball game alive. Don't get the first down, and the game is over. So with that being said, with the game on the line, let's see what the Bengals have lined up here. What play do they have in their back pocket to try and spoil the Steelers' home debut? You're punting the football. You're punting the football. You're down by 9 with 90 seconds left. You need a first down, and you're punting the football. Why are you punting the football? Why are you punting the football? Dick LeBeau, for the love of all things on the Ohio-Kentucky border, why on earth are you punting the freaking football?
That is a little bit of a surprise. Why wouldn't you just go for it? 1:29 remaining. 4th and 10. Harris's punt. 4th and 10's about a...
Welcome to Dumb Decisions. Before I break down what happened here, this whole series is about taking an in-depth look at decisions made during games that were clearly awful from the start. This isn't something to look bad in hindsight. Rather, this is something to look awful almost immediately. These are moves where your gut instinct tells you right away that there is no way this can possibly work. And sure enough, your gut instinct was smarter than that of an NFL head coach. And for this one, we're taking a look at the mind of Cincinnati Bengals head coach Dick LeBeau. I feel like LeBeau is a classic example of the phrase, "you can't be good at everything." As a player, LeBeau was one of the greatest defensive backs of all time, and is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame for a reason. He played 14 seasons in the NFL and recorded 62 interceptions, which is the 10th most in NFL history. Considering the closest active player to the top 10 is Patrick Peterson, who has 36 interceptions and is 34 years old, I think LeBeau is going to stay in the top 10 for a fairly long period of time. As an offensive coordinator, Dick LeBeau was also one of the greatest to ever do it. The Steelers had the #1 defense in yards allowed 5 times in a 9-year stretch, and from 2004 to 2011, they finished inside the top 3 in points allowed in 6 out of 8 seasons. The man knows how to coach a defense. But as a head coach, as the man in charge of the entire operation, well, LeBeau might be one of the worst to ever do it. And I do not say that lightly because there are a lot of bad coaches in this league. By the time LeBeau's tenure in Cincinnati came to a disastrous end, he finished his career with a 12-33 record, including a 2-14 record in 2002, his final season, that gave the Bengals the #1 pick in the ensuing NFL draft. When you're a head coach and you win 26% of your games, barely winning 1 out of every 4 games you play, I don't need to tell you that that's not good. And with coaching decisions like this one, it's no surprise as to why LeBeau didn't exactly pan out. So with that being said, let's take a look at why punting the ball away down by 9 points with 90 seconds left and no timeouts is a really bad idea. And obviously, I think this goes without saying, but your chances of winning the game at this point are not great. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Now, they're not impossible by any means. Heck, later in the season, we saw the Chicago Bears down by 14 points with 20 seconds left somehow come back and win, but your odds are not great. However, it's not as though this is a 4-possession or even a 3-possession game where you can decide in that spot to wave the white flag and surrender and just avoid having anyone else getting injured. This is a 2-score game. A 2-score game is incredibly attainable. All you need is 1 score, an onside kick, which obviously isn't easy, but it is doable, especially under the 2001 rules, and another score, and you win the game. And you have a fair amount of time, relatively speaking, to pull it off. This is not exactly a moment where you wave the white flag. Waving the white flag in a 2-score game is always going to be stupid, as I talked about in a dumb decisions video I did a while ago on a game between the New York Giants and the Atlanta Falcons in 1977, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And it's especially stupid here. Option 1 is to do what any sensible person would have done here, and what I think every fan was screaming at the Bengals to do. Go for it. Try and pick up the first down and get the requisite 10 yards to move the sticks. The best case scenario if that happens is that you have a chance at winning. Again, it's not a great chance, but depending on how many yards you get, you might even be near midfield if you take a shot. It's not as though 4th and 10 is impossible to convert either. You could get a first down off a defensive penalty like holding, illegal contact, or pass interference, which is a spot foul. You could complete a pass. Heck, on your last drive before this, you had not 1, not 2, but 3 passing plays go for over 10 yards, which would have been enough for a first down here. You had Peter Warrick haul in a 22-yard gain. You had Chad Johnson haul in some 10-yard gains and a 20-yard gain. And you had Darnay Scott haul in a 17-yard gain, just to name a few things that happened throughout the game. If you ask me who's got the upper hand on 4th and 10, of course I'm taking the Steelers' defense over the Bengals' offense. But it's not as though this is an unattainable down and distance to achieve. If you don't get it, what's the big deal? The game is over, you lose, and it's not as though the Steelers are going to score and impact your point differential. Not that it means anything, especially this early in the season, because the Steelers are just going to take a knee and run out the clock. Field position plays no part in this whatsoever. It's just common sense that you go for it there. Or you try option 2, which is what Dick LeBeau decided to do for some idiotic reason, which is to punt the football away and surrender. The best case scenario is that you lose the game. The worst case scenario is that you lose the game. So let me get this straight. You have 2 options, and both options give you the exact same worst case scenario, which is that you lose, and you lose by 9 points. However, one option gives you a chance to win the game, and the other option gives you no chance to win the game. Why on earth would you pick the option that gives you no chance? Why on earth would you pick the option where you cannot win the game? It's almost like if I have to pass a class or else I fail and I have to stay in school an extra semester. To pass the class, you have to take the test. However, you didn't study at all. Option 1 is to take the test. Your odds of passing aren't great, but at least you got a shot. Option 2 is to do absolutely nothing and not even show up. Well, you're guaranteed to fail that way. At least give yourself a chance. At least give yourself a fighting chance here. And the same applies for LeBeau. Why you're doing this and punting it away? I don't know. Because it doesn't make a lot of sense to surrender in a very attainable game. But here's the crazy part. After the game, this man right here, LeBeau, was asked about his bizarre strategy and why the heck he decided to punt the ball away. And as it turns out, he wasn't trying to surrender. As it turns out, he punted the ball back to the Steelers so he could win the game. Seriously. Because that makes sense. LeBeau genuinely thought that by punting the ball back to Pittsburgh, that his team actually had a chance at winning. Said LeBeau, they did what I hoped they would do, and that is put a guy back there to catch it. And I hoped he would drop the ball, and we would get the football in midfield with a new set of downs, and not be looking at 4th and 10 at our own 15. We needed 2 scores, not 1. They put the guy back there, and he caught the ball, and that was the game. I'm sorry, what? Did I just seriously hear a head coach of the National Football League say that? Did one of the supposed 31 brightest minds of the game seriously just come up with that idea? There are, shall we say, quite a few problems with this strategy. First off, way to have faith in your team and in your offense. That sends a great message to the guys going forward. You're basically telling your offense, you guys suck. We don't trust you to move the ball down the field and pick up 10 yards. So the only chance we have at winning is to rely on someone else making a mistake. And there's nothing we can do about it. I'm sure that's got to make everyone feel real good. I'm sure that's going to inspire everyone. Plus, let's just say this grand plan of yours does somehow work. Let's say that somehow this genius idea of yours succeeds, even though the Steelers had it muffed to punt all game, because very few teams muff punts. Your offense still has to drive down the field 60 or so yards, and then they have to do it again if they recover the onside kick. In your insanely backwards universe, you have faith in your offense to do that, but not to pick up 10 measly yards? Somehow, going 100-ish yards in 90 seconds was doable, but going 10 yards in one play was too much for you to handle? How does that make sense? And what I also don't get about this insane strategy by LeBeau is that he said that they needed 2 scores and not 1 score, implying that if they only needed 1 score, that he would have gone for it. But again, how does that make any sense? The logic in doing things differently in a 2-score game versus a 1-score game makes sense for certain things. If you're down by 9, it makes more sense to kick a field goal with a minute left versus being down by 5. If you're down by 9, it makes more sense to go for it with 5 minutes left versus being down by 6. But this? How would you have a better chance at winning going for it on 4th and 10 in one spot versus going for it on 4th and 10 in another spot? You're telling me that if you were down by 5, you would have gone for it and had faith in your offense. But because you were down by 9, that somehow gave you no faith? If it was 13-7, you would have done things differently? I'm not following the logic here at all. It's like saying in baseball that you're not going to try bunting for a base hit when the bases are empty and there are 2 outs. But you are going to try bunting for a base hit when there's a runner on first and there are 2 outs. Like, there shouldn't be a difference in your approach whatsoever. How you have a better chance of getting a first down in one scenario by relying on a muff punt, but have a better chance of the same exact scenario but the score is different by relying on your offense to get the first down, is mind-boggling to me. I cannot fathom the logic there whatsoever. But perhaps the biggest flaw with this strategy is the rules on a punt, which state that unless the punt is touched by the receiving team, the kicking team cannot retain possession. So, You know what any sensible team could do in this situation to foil your brilliant plan? That's right, not touch the freaking ball! Your genius plan involved punting the ball back and hoping for a muff, which is already a dicey proposition because returners don't muff the ball usually, and the odds of a muff happening are way less than your odds of converting on 4th and 10. But you know what the Steelers could have done? Just not send a guy back there to return the punt. If that happens, and Nick Harris gets the punt off, and no one is back there to field it, congratulations! You just lost for no reason. In fact, it's actually a really dumb decision by the Steelers that didn't end up mattering that they had a guy back there to field the punt in the first place, because there was no reason for them to do that, since a return does absolutely nothing for you. You just want the ball back so you can run out the clock. A good return changes nothing versus not touching it. A touchdown makes it worse versus not touching it because you give the ball back to the Bengals. And a muff makes it worse versus not touching it for obvious reasons. So I'm not even sure why Bill Cowher had a guy back there. Either way, if your grand plan, for no reason at all, involves relying on a professional athlete to drop the football when said athlete doesn't even have to touch the football, then maybe you need a different game plan. Just a thought. As for what happened to this team behind me right here after that loss to the Steelers, well, that decision by Dick LeBeau was a sign of things to come and was a pretty bad omen for the rest of the 2001 season. Despite starting the season with a 2-0 record, Cincinnati would proceed to lose 10 of their next 12 games, including that game against the Steelers, and they would finish the season with a very disappointing 6-10 record where they had the worst offense in the NFL in points scored. For some perspective on just how bad the Bengals were in 2001 on an offensive side of the ball, the quarterbacks threw 12 touchdowns and 26 interceptions. 12 touchdowns, 26 picks. When you have a touchdown to interception ratio of 1-2, or worse than 1-2, in the year 2001, it's like you're playing a completely different sport. And amazingly enough, this was Dick LeBeau's best season as a head coach. I kid you not, this 6-10 season was the best he did as the man in charge. The Bengals really were the Bungles back then. They were living up to their name and then some. So what do we learn from all of this? If you're down by 2 scores and there's no timeouts left, and there's less than 2 minutes to go in the game, then go for it! Freaking go for it! If your grand plan to win the game involves hoping the other team makes a mistake when it does not have to be in a position to make said mistake, then you shouldn't use that plan. If your grand plan to win the game involves trying the most convoluted way possible to get 10 yards, then you shouldn't use that plan. If 99.99% of head coaches in the NFL are going for it in this spot, and you're not, then odds are you're not a genius. You're not reinventing the wheel. You're just really freaking stupid. And if your grand plan involves hoping for a muff punt when the other team, quite literally, does not even have to touch the ball, foiling your plan without even doing anything, then I don't even know what to tell you. Because when all of these elements are in play, you can't exactly be surprised when this play backfires. Talk about a dumb decision. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.